Good evening. It's June 7th, 2022. The time is 6:05 p.m. I now call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of the Governor's March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available to the public by request. My name is Courtney Kirk. I am the co-chair of the Urban Design Commission, and I am going to start the meeting with a roll call of the commissioners present. Andrew Arbaugh.
Here.
Deborah Fennick.
Present.
Sherry Ruane.
Present.
Tim Hood.
Present.
And just for the record, Commissioners Frank Valdez and Tim Talon are not with us this evening. I am also joined tonight by Andrew Graminsky, he as our Urban Design Commission liaison, and also I'm just going to acknowledge that Sarah White from Planning, Preservation, and Zoning is also in attendance. We have 2 items on our agenda tonight, and one, the case for 483 Broadway. We still don't see the applicant at this meeting just yet. So as the chair of the meeting tonight, I'm going to take the agenda items out of order and we can start with other business, and perhaps our applicant for 483 might be joining us later. So I will turn this meeting over to you all, the commission, for any discussion and updates that you would like to talk about.
Sure.
I'll take this item as I have an update. I just wanted to inform the commissioners that, for the record, this is Andrew Graminsky, planner. Currently, planning staff is working on updating the rules and procedures for all the boards that we staff, including the UBC, and we're actually making some really good progress, and we're hoping to have a draft for commissioners to view in the next few weeks. The content will differ between boards. However, we're trying to be consistent in terms of a format for all the boards for that document. So like I mentioned last time we met, if you could send me any comments you have or things you'd like to see in the revisions, if that's being some new requirements or just also just procedures for how we run meetings, that would be greatly appreciated. Just make sure to email me individually and don't, and then we'll get that on the record and make sure we can incorporate those comments into the document. That's really the only update. Again, we're really aiming to get these done by the summer. So if you have any questions, we can discuss further. And I think while we're on the topic of meeting organization, another announcement is that there's a possibility that we could go back into sort of a hybrid in-person meetings starting July 15th. There's legislation in front of the Senate. I think House, I'm not sure which, they didn't vote completely on the continuance, but it's sort of in discussion with the state. So it's, we're sort of TBD in terms of that final determination if we will in fact be able to continue virtual meetings or we have to go to some sort of hybrid option. I wanted to make of you aware that there's a possibility that we might be meeting in person starting in July. And if you do have any reservations,
Yeah, I can just add that the Chapter 22 Acts of 2022 that I narrate at the beginning of this meeting, that executive order is supposed to expire July 15th. So unless the governor's office and everyone else at the state level comes up with some other order for us to follow, we would be going back in person.
Is that a requirement to be in person, or, I mean, can
I'm not-
this elect to be hybrid or be remote?
I'm not sure how
That's a
all
good
that
question.
works.
Yeah, we're working that out internally, Deborah. And so we will keep everyone in the loop of what that looks like. I know we've heard feedback from various members of our board saying they want to be in person and those that want to continue virtually. So if you could just maybe reach out if you have a preference in the meantime, that would be helpful for us. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I have a question about the rules and regulations, which is we had a meeting, oh boy, Andrew, do you remember how long ago? Where we talked about, we brainstormed
It was
quite
in
a bit,
November.
and in November, do you have those notes? And so we don't have to repeat ourselves, because it seems like, you know, we're going to comment on something that's an old document that I think we've already talked a little bit about, and then it's going to get updated. So our comments may be irrelevant. Yeah, so that would be really helpful.
I will go find those meeting notes and provide them to all commissioners after this meeting.
I think
Great.
building on
Thanks.
that too, like I had reached out about the possibility of a rules and regulations subcommittee. I guess I'm a little bit wary of just sort of all sending us individually, sort of sending a list and having it come back. It doesn't seem like a tremendously efficient way to achieve change, and it also doesn't allow us to have any real participation in the discussion internally. And that's where the rules and the subcommittee seemed like it was a vehicle where we could participate in the crafting of our own rules in a more direct manner, which I was kind of excited about. Is there any, I guess, feedback
We do owe
on
you an
that?
email response, Andrew. So. Yes.
Sorry?
I said we owe you an email response. We do have that email noted. Thank you, by the way. So I'll have to circle back with Sarah Lewis, and Courtney can be part of this discussion too internally with some of our senior staff regarding that subcommittee. Sarah's out sick today, unfortunately. So I'll see if she's back tomorrow and we can get back to you via email.
Yeah, and I would just like to let the record reflect that Commissioner Tim Talon has joined the meeting. And Tim, just for your knowledge, we have taken tonight's agenda out of order because our applicant for 483 Broadway is not currently present. So we're sort of.
I have an update on that, Courtney. There was some confusion regarding the scheduling of June meetings, and it ended up being, this is not the second Tuesday of the month, it's the first. And staff made an error and told them the 14th. So they were not prepared to meet tonight. So we're gonna have to continue them to the 21st, which is the next scheduled meeting.
Is that something that
So
we
we
have to
would just
vote on, or?
Yes, we would need to make a motion to continue.
Okay. Well, why don't we continue our first, the other business items, and then we'll.
I just wanted to provide that
Thank
update.
you. Yeah, great. Thank you.
I guess this would be a question too. So we have a discussion of the rules on the agenda for this evening, and we have no other applicant coming in this evening. Could we, as a group, review the rules instead of just do the thing, since we're here and we kind of set aside this time anyway?
That makes sense to me.
Sure, let's do it. Some public dialogue out there.
And
Um,
can
so we will-
somebody, can you send around the meeting notes from November, or?
I think
something
I
like
resent
that, or-
those in March. I can probably find those again.
Do you all want the rules on screen as they stand at the moment? Would that be helpful? How can I assist you?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
That would be helpful.
I will pull those up. Please give me a second. This is Andrew Gravinsky. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Got it.
Can I get a
Good.
verbal? Yes or no?
We can see
Good?
it. Yes.
Great.
So I'm sure there's probably a best way to do this. I don't know what it is. So I guess I can just, I'll start. I think one thing that kind of jumped out at me as I was going through this, and I had notes, and I'm sorry I haven't sent them over, other Andrew. One thing that jumped out at me was just the rules. It's clear that we're able to make changes to the document and we're able to make policy changes. It's not clear to me within this document how we do that, like what the actual procedure is. There's a note that's in there. Oh, we can see your email now.
Sorry about that. Thanks. This is, I gotta pause here. I'll pause it. Thanks, Andrew. Go ahead.
The go-to platform's not very good with multi-screen
Yeah,
issues.
I've run into that
No,
myself.
and I'm not at my desk. So I don't have my dual monitors, unfortunately.
There is something within, basically, like, I think if we scroll down, I think it's within the actual, like, rules of procedure for, like, the presentation itself. There's like a one-liner that says that you can adjust the rules within that or make a motion to change the rules.
Yeah,
Which
under motions and voting, it's one of the options is to amend the rules of procedure and policy.
Which is the weirdest thing ever, to think that we'd be halfway through reviewing a project and just say, now we want to change the rules for the commission.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the right time.
Yeah, and that's the only time it's noted. It's not noted if it's a majority vote. It's not noted if there's just kind of no information given as to how we can do this.
Those are good questions, Andrew. I don't know if I can answer all of them tonight. We might have to consult with some senior staff on this who were around when these were written or amended the last time to get that idea. But as staff is going this process internally, you will ultimately be the ones who will amend and update those rules and procedures via a motion. So
Yeah,
staff
I think
basically in this case is acting on as assistance to you in coming up with new amendments, and then you ultimately will be the decision maker.
Yep, I'm hoping that, like, as a group we can kind of, agree on, which of these things seems important as a group to send back to staff. And if there's other things that also seem important to kind of give you guys the feedback as to what we think is in here, which is going well or is not going well. So I can jump into it.
Andrew, Andrew Arbaugh, why don't you just keep going through your the
I don't
things
have
that
all
you've
of my notes in
flagged
front
so
of me,
far?
but I'll try to, I'm doing it from memory. One thing that I know too is we talked about the 20-minute rule, which I think has been good and helpful. In my head, I think there's probably different levels of projects, and it might make sense to sort of codify that so that if there's a project that's above, a certain square footage threshold, you know, maybe it has a different review standard than a project below a different square footage threshold, so that if we're reviewing, you know, some major skyscraper in Boynton Yards, we're giving ourselves an allowance of time to discuss, and maybe slightly different things that they actually need to present and provide, as opposed to something like the project that was supposed to be here this evening, which was much smaller in scale and smaller in square footage as well. And I don't know what that threshold would be, but I'm sure the architects probably have a better sense of that than I would.
Yeah, I'd suggest maybe as a starting point, at least for buildings in the high-rise district, setting aside 40 minutes for discussion and targeting a vote on massing after, you know, 15 or 20 or something, so that we can settle on the massing options and then have time set aside to talk about facade options and landscape and public realm.
I know the planning department gets like a staff report in, and I'm not suggesting that we need that, but a simple one pager that would just sort of give us what the, you know, what the district is and a little bit of information about it would be incredibly helpful, just as a starting point. That would help me a lot, you know.
So
Yeah, that's something that we talked about. I remember that was
Talked about similar to this.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in that we have the right background information to review each case with the agenda.
Andrew G, can I jump in real quick to respond to that? I would, in other information such as what votes you would be potentially taking, be also something that you would like to see on that sort of one pager document.
Yeah, if it's a
Sort
returning,
of a summary zoning district. You know, obviously it's based for a building, and then exactly sort of the design, and then the applicable design guidelines, of course, and yada yada yada.
Yep.
and if it's a returning project, knowing who was there the first time, just so that we can kind of avoid the sort of accidental quorum issues.
So one other item related to the high-rise districts and time limits. You know, one of the things I've thought as we see these presentations come in, you know, there's a requirement for 3 massing options and then 3 facade options. And no one's doing 3 facade options for each of the massing options. Basically, everyone's choosing a massing option and saying this is our preferred and developing that. And I don't think it's realistic to expect someone to develop 9 facade options on a high-rise building for presentation. You know, another approach, rather than just extending the limit to 40 minutes or an hour or whatever it takes to review the whole project, would be that, you know, one meeting is a presentation of massing, and then another meeting is a presentation, once that's been selected, another meeting is a presentation of facade options and landscape. I know from having done similar type of massing studies, being able to just focus on massing and develop that, there's benefit to that, and really being able to focus on that and have a focused discussion on
it. Tim, I like that suggestion. I think we would want to also include with the high-rise projects like the ones we reviewed in Davis Square. So I don't know what those districts are called, but the commercial districts where, I mean, I think our greatest responsibility is where the most people are going to be, you know, interfacing with these buildings. And so those are also, I think, something that might be worthy of more extended conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's also noted at the end, like there's the Assembly Row and Davis Square at the very, very end, as the sort of, if we go to the end of this document, Anyway, the communities that have separate design guidelines outside of the zoning ordinance, having a planner explain that or just give us a little bit of information would be incredibly helpful too. And sort of similar, like the NACTO thing that was the guideline for the thoroughfares. It's a lot of information to kind of ask a volunteer organization to kind of absorb at the ready, and it would be really helpful to have city staff presenting and kind of explaining the things that are outside of our normal purview when we run into a project that is outside of our normal purview.
Taking note that some of these items, I think, outside of the rules and procedures update, and don't necessarily, like, for example, having city staff present certain items to you, as well as those sort of one-pagers. I think we can do those things without necessarily making amendments to the rules and procedures. I just wanted to note that.
So I would say I also think it's a good idea for additional time for the larger projects, massing, fenestration, landscape. I think it's a good idea. It's always helpful though to have scale for the massing options. So if there's some sort of development of fenestration with those, that's always helpful. I did have one question. Andrew, you had sent out updated legal information just on procedures. And in that, I noticed that it said alternate members do not constitute a quorum. And this document says that 3 members or an alternate member do. So I was just looking for clarification on that.
Tim, could you, what document specifically did I send? Could you be a little bit more specific? I can't remember or recall which one I sent.
You forwarded an email from George Proakis with updated information. Says supplemental guidance to important legal.
Got it. Yes. Yes. So we're most likely going to have to incorporate those things into this new amendment. Now I know that's contradicting from what we've been doing and what's in the current rules and procedures document that we're looking at. So let me confirm those things internally with the administration. But I wouldn't. Yeah, we'll make sure that that's resolved.
Sherry, do you have any thoughts at this time?
No, I feel like I'm still sort of getting up to speed, but I agree with the having the sort of intro one pager. I think that really helps frame the project and allow us to focus our comments.
So would it be possible to get one of those for the next meeting, just even as a test run?
Yes, we can do that, Andrew.
That would be great. Commissioner Fennick.
I seem to remember us having a lot of discussion about our relationship with the planning board and our what do you call it? You know, what recommendations do carry to the planning board. I loved the days, back in the days when there was a planning board member who was a part of the design review commission. You know, it was a committee then, I think. That sort of thing. Because I feel like, I mean, at this point, after a lot of the discussion we had, I feel like our comments maybe just, you know, go into a black hole or don't go anywhere. And I think that's worthy of a conversation and maybe some modifications in the process.
I think at our last meeting, we discussed perhaps inviting them to our meeting. Is there any movement on that, Andrew?
I am unaware. I think Sarah Lewis was going to take the lead on that. I will need to get an update, and I can also reach out to the planning board liaison to see if there's.
Can we just invite them to the June 21st meeting?
I mean, we can. That doesn't, I don't think necessitate that they'll be able to in that meeting. I don't know what the general process is other than and I guess formally inviting them to a meeting. If something would have to be brought up at one of their hearings about it. So I just need to do some follow up, and then I will update everyone via email if we do get word before the next meeting.
I motion to formally invite the planning board members to our June 21st meeting.
Second?
All right, roll call votes that the staff work to invite the planning board to the next Urban Design Commission meeting. Motioned by Andrew Arbaugh, seconded by Tim Talon. Roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh.
Yes.
Deborah Fennick.
Yes.
Tim Talon.
Yes.
Sherry Ruane.
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, unanimous vote.
Is there, what's on the screen, is there any reference to what happens to our comments after and our recommendations after, you know, we conclude them? I mean, maybe that'd be worth taking a look at.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about last time, I think last meeting, was in the same way as we review meeting minutes, reviewing the recommendations that then go to the planning board and to the applicant, which I think would be, and I know, Andrew, you had mentioned that there's a new process working with the specific planners assigned to the project to develop those, but I think that would be very helpful if we could take, you know, if the votes are taken, 2 weeks later we meet again, we're voting on those, the text of those recommendations or providing additional feedback on it.
That sounds great. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's helpful as well.
What's C? What, if we scroll down, is that relevant to this conversation?
This is just information on what sort of recommendations the board makes. And as you can see, the one reason we want to update this is because it still says reserved for civic spaces and thoroughfares.
Okay.
Yeah, I think staff can definitely try to fill in some of those civic space reserved sections and thoroughfare sections for you all to review.
So I've got another item just to mention, and I think we talked about this a bit back in November. I think the Rules and Regulations Subcommittee is a great idea to address to provide specific recommendations for this document and get that moving forward. The other thing that I've kind of had, well, the second thing is kind of our scope and purview, and that especially related to master plans. We talked a bit about that last week, and I hope there's the opportunity to move forward on that. The third thing is that I've kind of had in my mind is the design guidelines that we are using that is the basis for our review of projects. I think, generally many of them are good, but I think it would be great to have the opportunity to discuss as a commission how those are working and whether those are comprehensive. Do those really cover all the qualities that we would want to see in the public realm in order for us to kind of fulfill the mission of the commission? Are there other suggestions, other recommendations we might make to for additional design guidelines, or maybe some even to remove? So I'm wondering if that's perhaps something that could take place under the purview of the Rules and Regulations Subcommittee or elsewhere.
So Tim, I just want to also just remind you that what you were talking about is going to entail zoning amendment to the code for those things, for at least your purview to review the master plan special permit and if there was any changes to the design guidelines.
Yep. Yeah, so maybe, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to loop in the land use committee kind of upfront on that, just to reach out to them and say, hey, this is something, this is our scope. We'd love to work on this collaboratively with them, or for us to take a first pass at just reviewing the design guidelines as they are now.
I would be interested in that. That sounds great.
I think that's a great suggestion. Also. Yeah, they've been in place for now a couple of years, the new zoning rules, and I think we've learned a bit working with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for example, there's no design guideline that specifically refers to the character and quality of the sidewalk and consistency with complete streets ordinance or something like that. And that's a big part of what we're doing when we're reviewing.
Yeah, just 12 foot, that's about it.
Yeah, exactly.
We can still see your screen, Andrew.
Wanted to make sure that we can get everything noted. Thank you, Andrew, for the reminder. Gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, and I think that the land use committee has been open to this. I provided comments on the mechanical penthouse zoning amendment, and they basically took the suggestions for design guidelines and just incorporated them. Now they're in the zoning. I think they're definitely open to it.
So in terms of the Rules and Regulations Subcommittee, I just, not to kind of beat the deadest dead horse, but I guess I haven't heard anyone say that they're particularly opposed to it. Is there anything preventing us from just establishing it?
I don't believe so. And I believe that form is 3 members, that the subcommittee would have to be 2 members.
Would, I guess that was one clarification question I had too, is Courtney a member as co-chair? Like, can Courtney be on it as not a member?
Oh, that is a good question, because Courtney is a co-chair, but she is more acting, so quote unquote, as an advisor in terms of she's not a voting member.
And a subcommittee, we could have more than quorum as long as we announce it, right? Like, we just announce that we're meeting as a subcommittee.
Correct, and staff is allowed to be there in attendance as well at those meetings.
So we could technically have a subcommittee of the full membership as long as we just announce it.
Yeah, it's going to have to be we'll have to have scheduled meetings that the public is aware about.
Okay. So I motion to establish a rules and regulations subcommittee.
Second.
All right, the commission has moved a motion to establish a rules and regulations subcommittee, motion by Commissioner Andrew Arbaugh, seconded by Tim Talon. Roll call vote, Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, the commission would like to establish a rules and regulations subcommittee. Would you like to identify who should be on that, or do you want to think about that?
I mean, I would think the general membership, that would be my thought, was that I think everybody has an interest in it. It's just giving us a forum outside of our regular meetings for those of us who want to join and talk about it. Honestly, more like this than what we normally have the opportunity to do. So I don't know if other what people want to limit it to a smaller group, but if there's anyone who's not interested, you're not required to.
Well, this is where I think this gets into the open meeting law. So if it's less than quorum, you are allowed to meet and speak freely. But if it's at a quorum level, you all have to have your conversations as part of the public record and would have to have those conversations be part of the agenda and give the public the 48 hours notice, or we would have to publicly post a special meeting for that subcommittee.
I get the sense that Tim Talon and I are both interested in this. I saw some nodding from Deborah that felt like interest. Does that, I guess I'll just ask, like, Deborah, are you interested in being part of the subcommittee?
I think I am overcommitted. So, but I think there's a way for what you know, if the two of you are on the committee, you know, that we have sessions where we all respond to what you've been developing. I think that I would be perfectly comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim Hood and Sherry?
I think that would be acceptable, yeah.
All right, so yeah, if Andrew Arbaugh and Tim Talon, I think you all can organize amongst yourselves and have some, if you know, we put time on the agenda, or let us know when you would like to do a report out to the full commission on what you've been developing and the components that you would be seeking a commission vote to adopt. I think that's probably the logical procedure, and that probably has to be formalized in the rules and regulations doc.
That sounds like a good first thing to do.
So would this also include looking at the zoning, some of the zoning issues, do you think? I mean, what do you call it? Specific guidelines that are in zoning right now that we use to evaluate projects.
We could keep that under the scope of the rules and regs, or we could do a separate one, I guess, a separate committee to look at that if we wanted to establish that. We're making it rain tonight, committees, so. We've got the taste for it now.
I mean, maybe it's not, it doesn't make sense to separate it. I was just curious, you know, whether, yeah, I mean, they're, you know, what we do and how we do it. So,
This is Andrew Graminsky. I just wanted to point out that in the document, we don't go into full detail on like what the goals guidelines are. We just state, they're established by the Somerville zoning ordinance or a prior PUD, in this case assembly, and then other master plans have their own guidelines. So we don't necessarily need to amend this for you all to be able to do that work in the background. Just want to point that out.
Just as a food for thought, I mean, I think, while we're on the topic of subcommittees, if you all feel like there should be a zoning ordinance subcommittee or something, I always think about committees in relation sometimes to other committees. So for example, the Urban Forestry Commission, they, have subcommittees that do outreach tasks. They have subcommittees that look specifically at development projects. And have formulated those on their own, organically as the time that the commissioners have been on that commission. So, I mean, I think I'm just putting it out there that you all have the power that when you're thinking about some of these issues, if it helps for you to organize in these subcommittees in some way.
So if we established a zoning ordinance subcommittee, we don't have to like do it every week. It's just sort of like, it's a thing that exists. If we decide that we need to meet, we have it out there, right?
Yeah, and I think part of the agenda procedure can include, the report out from any subcommittees on their business.
Well, I was going to add that actually, Courtney, is that maybe since we're talking about these subcommittees, that we'll make sure that when we do this rewrite, we include something about subcommittees and those formations and sort of the procedure. So we have it on somewhere. I think it's a good idea.
Anything
That's all.
else?
Can you explain about when the subcommittees meet? It's all announced publicly within 48 hours, same as like this meeting? Or was it?
I think if it's just me and Tim, then we don't have to because we're not hitting a quorum. So it's just that we have to report back. If we were to make it any bigger, then we would have to make it a meeting. Is that correct, Courtney?
Yeah, that's how I understand it.
We can double check though on that just to make sure tonight or sometime this week, and then we can get back by the end of the week just to confirm those procedures for you.
Okay, and then I do have the same question as a alternate member, if I constituted a quorum or not, and that would allow additional members to those subcommittees greater than 2.
I think that's an interesting question, and I have no answer for that.
I don't either, Tim. I'm sorry. I will have to follow up.
Okay.
Awesome.
Do you all have any other items or knowing, so we can perhaps close this part of the agenda for this evening?
Motion to close.
I don't know.
Second.
Whatever.
All right, we'll vote that we will close the other business side of the agenda this evening. Roll call vote, Andrew Arbaugh.
I'm trying to eat dinner at the same time. Yes.
Deborah Fennick.
yes.
Tim Talon.
Yes.
Sherry Ruane.
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, the other business is complete for this meeting. And I will bring up that for 83 Broadway, the applicants had the date confused for this meeting. So can I have a motion for the 483 Broadway project to be continued until a future meeting?
I'll move to continue the 45.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Sherry, seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, the commission has voted to continue the 483 Broadway project to a future meeting. With that, that completes all of our business for this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
All right, do I have a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Tim Hood. Roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, this motion of the this meeting of the Urban Design Commission has come to a close. Thank you for your input tonight and progress on the functioning of this commission. See you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Very cute.